Welcome to Kraken's Garage. Tonight we have the honored guest, Craig with 388 Racing. He also has a second channel of SG Retired. We'll talk about that in a little bit. He hails from the northeastern part of the United States. He's been riding for as long as I have, if not longer. He just got back into track riding or road racing, and he has quite the story to tell. So I hope you all enjoyed tonight's episode. Why don't you introduce yourself, Craig?
Sure. My name is Craig. I have the 388 Racing YouTube channel. That is my dedicated motorcycle slash racing YouTube channel. And I've got quite a bit of content on there. I've got some on-bike racing videos. I do a lot of live streams. I'm up in Massachusetts. Closest track that I race at is in New Hampshire at Loudon. And usually in the off season, once a week, I'll do a live stream and I'll get some of the other racers on, and we'll just have some banter over the end of the series. I've also had some of the Moto America racers on there. 3 of them I just did a live stream on, and I've done an interview with Mr. Teague Hobbs, who is a super sport racer with Moto America. So that's that. And then I have my other channel, MSG Retired. That got started. I started doing some stolen valor investigations and looking into people's backgrounds when they're coming up with some crazy claims. And I think my biggest one was Mr. Florida man himself, Jeremy DeWitt. And if you go down that rabbit hole is deep. So just beware if you look him up, police impersonator, special forces impersonator, you'll go in that rabbit hole and you won't come out for days. But that's a little bit about myself. I'm retired U.S. Army. I currently work as a police officer here in Massachusetts, and probably another year before I pull the pin on that and retire from that. 33 years in the Army. I all over the world, over in the sandbox a few times, and yeah, that's about it. And if you have questions, by all means, throw them in the chat, and I'll see if I can't answer them.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much, everybody, for showing up. It's good to see my regulars here popping in to say hello. And we're going to start diving right into the questions. What made you decide? Well, first of all, your MSG Retired channel is primarily stolen valor, but you also put some motorcycle videos on that channel as well.
I did a couple of years ago. I bought a Harley, and then I bought another Harley, and I just started going around. Went to Sturgis a couple of times. I met a veteran biker out in Sturgis 2 years ago, going on 3 years. We rode together, and I was posting some DIY stuff because I do all my own maintenance, all my own mechanic work. So I was doing some DIY videos and just some touring stuff. And once I made the crazy decision to go back to racing, I started the second channel just to separate the two. So you'll find Harley content also on my racing channel as well. There's not a lot of it, but.
Gotcha. So what made you decide to kind of trend towards the motorcycle aspect of it? I get the Master Sergeant, 33 years in the Army, and I get riding for most of your life and your current profession. I've got a rogue dog in the background. There we go. And basically, my question would be, would you decide to start getting into the moto aspect of YouTube?
I saw some channels out there, and I said, I could do that. And it's a technical thing. I'm really a friggin' geek at heart. I got GoPro cameras is one of them. I got the GoPro Black Mini. I've got GoPro cameras all over the place, and it's more of a technical kind of thing. I thought these were really cool, and hooking them up to your helmet, and I said, well, maybe people will like what I'm doing and enjoy a ride in the countryside of New England, and that's kind of what got me into it.
Okay, so take us back to when you were 33 years old and you started road racing. What made you cross that bridge? And that will segue into where you're at today and why you're going through that misery and pain.
Yeah. Well, I've always ridden. I mean, I got my first motorcycle in 1973. My dad got me a Suzuki TC 125. And I've always gravitated to the motorcycles. And it's kind of weird. We had come back I was stationed in Germany, and we had come back. We were stationed in Georgia. And I had a BMW K75S, and this was like early 1995. And we were just doing a little tour up in the mountains of Georgia. Went to Road Atlanta. John Surtees, who was a big road racing guy back in the day, was leading a couple of laps around Road Atlanta. So I got out there on the old K75 and tried to keep up with the old man, and the hook was set. And 95, July of 95, I participated in my very first WERA race, WERA. It's Western Eastern Road Racing Association, at none other than Rockingham, the NASCAR track, which is a tiny little bowl. And you would go along the skirting of the high banks, and they'd have a little short infield course, and then you come back out. And I actually got my first podium that day. I think they paid the top 5 that day. So I got my first podium. Well, not a top 3, but I was a top 5, and I got a plaque for it.
It's still a shot of adrenaline when you're scrubbing and trying to get somewhere,
Yeah, it was crazy. And a very close dear friend of mine, Ed Bargy, and he's still teaching today. I took his road racing class at Roebling Road, which is right outside of Savannah. And Ed's just salt of the earth, best guy in the world, Air Force veteran. And he started the road racing school, and I took his course. We became very good friends. And I just saw him again this past February when I was down at Roebling Road. But 95, I started. I did okay my first couple of races off season. 96, I went full bore in the lightweight twins classes, sportsman, lightweight, super twins. And in 96, I raced with CCS, Championship Cup Series. I raced with that organization, and I concentrated on that. And we went around to all the southern tracks, and I managed to win 2 championships. I won the Southeast Region Sportsman Championship, and then I won the Southeast Region Super Twins class for that year, for 96. So that was my first full season of racing. Now, I was in the Army at the time, so or I had just gotten out of the Army, I should say. I was in the reserves at the time, because in 92, I got out on the early out program, stayed in the reserves, and then I went back active duty some years after that, and that's a whole nother convoluted story. But I raced from 95 to 2004, when we actually moved back up here right before my last jaunt over to the sandbox.
Excellent. I got to share a short story with you. I went to high school in SoCal. When I started riding, I got my parents into it. Dad got the bug bit again or whatever. I came back to Virginia and started my career and blah, 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 blah. I would go back once or twice every year for a quick visit. On one of the trips I went back, I borrowed one of their bikes. So I took a trip. My dad and my stepmother blew my doors off. So, all right, I could not keep up with them. Now I'm young, dumb, and full of you know what on my crotch rocket back in Virginia, and Geese and Louise just blew my doors off. I couldn't believe it. So we pull over, and I asked, "What the hell happened since I've been gone?" And then they went and took the Reg Pridmore
Oh yeah.
track class.
Yep.
And I said, "Oh hell no, I will not have this. Next trip I'm booking out here, I'm taking that class." And I did, and I took the Reg Pridmore class. It was a game changer on my riding, for real. You don't realize how much you don't know until somebody teaches you how to ride fast. It's amazing.
Yep. I recommend it for everybody. Take one of those classes. Any of them actually. It's going to improve your riding ability on the street tenfold, because
everybody seems narrow focused on the riding skills in the parking lot around cones. To hell with that. Go have some fun and hit a track and learn to ride fast, because that's where it's at to me.
Yeah.
But anyway, short story of mine. Sorry about that. Most people don't know who Reg Pridmore is, but he was the first person to win Daytona on a Boxer BMW back in the 70s. And he was shit hot in his day, and still is to this day. I believe his class is still going. I don't know if he's teaching it or, subordinate.
Eric, we lost your audio. Nope, still no audio. Eric has problems with internet. He doesn't. He lives in a rural area, so I'm thinking his internet's kind of bouncing around on him here. Might take him a second to come back with the audio.
Is that any better?
You're back.
Okay, we'll give this another try. Thank you. Sorry for the trouble, folks. I'm going to have to figure Plan B out because this is unacceptable. But basically, that's kind of the story on the one and only time of being on a track, and it was an epic chapter in my life, without a doubt.
The first time you go out on the track, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Be prepared to be humbled. There's everyone out on that track is going to blow your numbers off, and there's nothing you can do.
Yep.
It's a work in progress.
I came off of winning 2 amateur championships in '96, so now I go expert in '97, and I've got my hybrid lightweight bike, which was basically at one point it started life as an EX500, and it became this Frankenstein bike with a Honda front end, a Honda rear wheel, and a motor that would last 15 races before the crankshaft would snap. And we knew that. So every 15 sprint races, you were rebuilding the motor. So I went from that, and we talked a little bit before we went live. I went into the NASB realm, which took over for AMA as far as the road racing stuff went. And I entered into what they call the Harley 883 Cup races. Now you're taking a Harley Davidson 883 Sportster, clamping on a set of clip-on handlebars. So they're not up here anymore. Now they're attached to the front forks, and they're about this long. And you're riding this 500-pound, 64 horsepower tank around the banks at Daytona. And I'll tell you what, it sounds ridiculous, but it is so much fun. And I mean, I got to mix it up with some of the boys, the Boston boys, Trip Noble. Some of those guys were all out there. Miguel Duhamel, his dad was out there racing with us. And it was a lot of fun banging bars with those guys on the Harleys. And I also did a little bit of racing with I bumped up into the middleweights with a ZX6R Kawasaki back then as well. And I mean, that went on right up until I would say like 2001 is when I really started fading away from the racing. It just got so expensive. My sponsors were still wanting me to make those monthly credit card payments because my sponsors were Visa and MasterCard. And those were my own that were in my pocket. So,
Just imperishable, brakes, tires, etc.
oh,
I mean, oh my God,
yeah,
just terrible.
yeah.
Yeah, but the obvious question is, what made you revisit that at this point in your life after your, let's see, that was 33, so that was 30 years ago, I'm going to guess.
Yeah, it was 20. I came off the track. I used to do track days down there as well. A friend of mine would hold track days. And this is when the whole track day thing was just really first starting to get going. And I had a 2001 ZRX 1200R that I did some suspension work on it, put a pipe on it, jetted it up. Great bike. What a fun bike. You know, upright, sit upright. They actually had a race class for that. It was a spec class. But I used to go to the track days and, you know, all my friends, I'd give their girlfriends a ride on the back out on the racetrack. And yeah, and my wife's chiming in the background, except me. But, you know, and that, of course, I was teaching for the Ed Bargy Road Racing School at the time as well. I was a track coach for him. So I would either ride my Harley, you know, guys that are coming in to take the track course and they're all like, you know, yeah, I'm a pretty fast rider, blah, 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 blah. And they're riding like 929 Hondas and stuff like that. And here I am. I've got this clapped out, beat up EX500 looking thing with race fairings on it. And I've got an 883 Harley. I've got a ZRX 1200R. And I would just go out and I'd let them think they were doing well. But then, you know, I'd go blowing by them going into turn one on my 500. And they're riding a 929 or a Ducati 916 or something like that. So that was a lot of fun. That humbled a lot of people. And then they started paying attention to what Ed was teaching. And then they got fast.
Excellent. So I got lots of great questions here.
And I didn't finish that question either. I didn't tell you how I ended up back into this.
Okay.
So last year in the spring, I took a trip down to Maggie Valley, North Carolina. And that's where the big museum is, Wheels Through Time. So I went down there, stayed at a campground, went to the museum, and I rode I've got a 2018 Ultra Classic anniversary or an Ultra anniversary. And I made the mistake of taking a ride over to Tail of the Dragon. And last time I was at Tail of the Dragon, I was on my ZRX. And I've actually got a video of my ride on Tail of the Dragon on my Harley. So go check it out.
Okay.
I had to keep reeling myself in because I'd start to scrape some hard parts. And I'm like, slow down, because you're here by yourself. And I got the bug. So I said, maybe I'll try some track days. Started looking around for a used race bike, something lightweight class. I found a 2007 SV650 already set up for racing. It was already ARMA approved for racing, and he had also raced some Weir and CCS. Drove down to Maryland, picked that bike up, came home, went to a track day, and I think the next race weekend I was up at Loudon signing up for a race school to get my license again, and it's just kind of gone from there. Although this year has not been a good year, and we'll talk about that in a little bit.
I would argue the Suzuki SV650 is the iconic standard starter bike for track riding.
And when they came out in 99, they started dominating the lightweight class racers. Anybody can grab a 600 and go out and race.
Right.
But to go fast on a lightweight bike, you have to have a little bit of skill and a little bit of craziness about you to ride them the way we do. But
So my next question would be, why did you pick the number plate 388?
okay, so 388. I looked at the Northeast Motorcycle Road Racing Association. I went through their rosters to see if my old pro number from my 883 days and my expert days was available, which was 38. That number was not available. They had an expert up there that was already running that number. So I just went with a variation of 388. But 38 was my actual first pro number motorcycle road racing that I ever had. So
Okay.
and it was basically, I think, the age when I went pro, actually, if I remember correctly. I was 38 when I went pro. And so that's how the 388, I just looked for a variation of 383, 380, 381, 388 popped up, and I said, perfect. I'll sign up for that number. And I also have that number assigned to me with ARMA, and also CCS ASRA. Those are two other race organizations I belong to, and that is my actual competition number in both of those.
So let's talk about your challenges that after your return to racing. I know you have some things you want to share there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the hazards of racing.
Well, the challenges coming back. I'm not. I wasn't where I thought I was going to be when I first went back out on the track. I'll just say that. I had to go take a license course again because it had been so many years since it had been over 24 years since I had been out on a track. So I went and took a license class with the Penguin Road Racing School at Loudon and participated in my first novice race. And I did pretty well last year. Now, NEMR, Northeast Motorcycle Road Racing Association, has a little bit different program. They start you off as a novice, and you have lap times that you have to meet before you can bump to amateur and before you can bump to expert. So last season, I started late in the season. I believe I started in August. And I raced 7 races the end of last season, and I podiumed on 5 of them. And I met that bump time to bump up to amateur, which I'm at right now. I was doing pretty well. I was doing really good. A friend of mine, I was riding a 2007 SV650. I had it rebuilt over the winter, and I was going to race that again this season. And then a friend of mine who owns 2 Aprilia dealerships in Georgia called me up, said he had an Aprilia RS660 that he just took in. It was a bit weathered because the kid lived in an apartment and it sat outside a little bit with a cover. So there was a little bit of rust on some of the fasteners. It had 3,000 miles on it. He gave it a clean bill of health, and I got it for a song. I got it for $8K, and it was a 2021 with 3,000 miles on it last year. So I got that, converted that into a race bike, and that was my goal for this year, to campaign that bike. So February comes around, crappy weather here in New England. We load up the trailer, back down to Georgia we go to visit friends, and I'm going to participate in some racing at Rolling Road. Now, when we lived there, I had a house that when you went through turn 2, if you looked through the bushes, you could see my house almost. That's how close to the racetrack I was. So, and we had a lot of friends there. I was stationed there for quite a few years after going back on active duty. And we went down and we spent a week. We visited. That last weekend, I was racing. So I did a practice day. I was banging my old lap times from way back when on the SV. Get out there. I was feeling out the RS660. I was about 3 or 4 seconds a lap faster on the RS 660 than I was on the SV. And Saturday,
it's such an upgrade. Day and night bikes difference.
Yeah, it's a true race bike. When you get on it, it's a race bike. Right. Just the riding position, the way the bike feels. It's not like an SV 650 where it's more geared toward your beginner street rider, that kind of stuff. This thing is a true blue race bike, and did really well. I raced the Sound of Thunder 3 class on the SV 650, and I raced in the Sound of Thunder 2 class with the Aprilia. I finished 4th on my Saturday race in SOT3, finished 8th in the SOT2 class. Now, one thing about ARMA, there are no separation between amateurs and experts. You all race against each other. So I'm racing against guys that are expert racers that have been racing for quite some time. I'm just coming back into it, and I'm pretty much hanging with these guys. Saturday went great. Had a great time. Felt really good on both bikes. And Sunday comes around. We go out to the track. I get my practices in. Sound of Thunder 3 class. We started in front of 2 other classes of racers that were on vintage bikes that are probably 20 seconds a lap slower than we are. My very first race on Sunday, takeoff. I'm doing really well. I'm in a podium position. I'm fighting with this guy. We're going back and forth for 3rd place. And Roebling Road's got a long straightaway. You're probably 130, 140 on a lightweight bike. Go through turn 1. Turn 2 is a reducing radius. And then it's whacked on full throttle, 4th into 5th gear going through turn 3. And as I came through 2 and I looked up to go through turn 3, I've got these 2 vintage bikes doing this in front of me. And I managed to split in between them without hitting them at about 100 miles an hour and ran out of racetrack, and off I went. And I can remember thinking to myself, you're in the grass, you're on slick tires, the brakes are not working. I'm heading straight, and my trailer is like right in front of me on the other side of the fence. I can see the tire wall, and it's getting bigger as I move with some dirt in front of it. And I'm like, you should probably get off of this friggin' motorcycle, like right. And then it was too late. Hit the sand, threw me off, hit the tire wall, got flipped up and landed on top of the tire wall, and my ass was stuck in one of the tires. My air vest had gone off, knocked the wind out of me, and lost my face shield. It broke one of the clips on the face shield, lost my face shield. There's dirt everywhere. My wife is standing there horrified to have just witnessed this. And all I did sitting in that tire trying to get out is I just gave everybody a big thumbs up. And I managed to roll over and crawl out of it. So, not feeling too good at this point. I am hurting pretty good, but there's still a lot of adrenaline. So I get up, I walk over, crash truck comes over, they load the bike, I hop in, they take us around. I sat down in the pits. And if you would, Eric, you can share this first picture. This is a picture of me right after the accident. Now, if you look, you can see all that nice raspberry there on my forehead and on the right side of my head. That is actually from having a ill-fitting helmet. My helmet fit just a little bit too loose, and because it twisted around on my head, that's how I got those raspberries. And I've got another one that I can share here if I can.
Why in God's name did they let the vintage bikes out while you guys are blowing through at 100 miles an hour? Who's the scholar that came up with that?
It happens everywhere you go because they've got so many classes and only so much time. So they'll start you off in a wave. So wave 1 will take off. Wave 2 will take off. Sometimes wave 3 or wave 4. And they'll wait a certain amount of time. And unfortunately, after we get through turn 1, wave 2 takes off. And then after they get through turn 1, wave 3 takes off. And by the time I was on my second lap, we were already dodging these guys. And let me see if I can see how to do this here. All right, present.
That's crazy.
So we were staying with some friends of ours, and don't share this one just yet. We went to their house after the race. Everybody in the pit's great, no matter what track you go to. Everybody helped get the trailer all packed up and get all my stuff in it. My SV650 was pretty beat up because that was the bike I was on. Luckily, it wasn't the brand new one. We got both bikes in the trailer, got everything all loaded up. We go to our friends, and I'm not feeling too well, and I'm starting to hurt pretty bad. The adrenaline's starting to wear off. Not feeling too good. And I said, well, maybe a good night's sleep. Couldn't lay down. The ribs on my left side and the back were all bruised all the way down my back. Now, I had an air vest on. Thank God I had that air vest on, because that thing immediately pops the minute you go flying. It's an Alpenstar. It's got a computer in it, understands what's going on, the accelerometer's in it, and it was an immediate pop on that. You kind of poof, you look like the Michelin man when it goes off. And that probably saved me from some more serious injuries. But if you want to share this next picture, that morning at 4 a.m., they called for an ambulance to come get me at our friend's house. And in this picture, you can see the 2 circles. There's actually 3 of them, but I had fractured 3 vertebrae in my back. Was not good.
Good God.
So this is February 19th this year. So I've got the 3 broken vertebrae. They kept me in the hospital for 3 days for pain management. They wanted to keep me longer. All the ribs on the left side and the back were kind of mangled up. And you can actually see where some of the ribs look like they're not in the right place. They're kind of moved around a little bit. And we can stop that one. It was not fun. And I've got 1,050 miles to drive home when I'm released from the hospital. So my season did not start well. So I'm in a back brace with this big thing in the front and wearing that. And I know this is one of your questions. The scariest thing that ever happened on a motorcycle was probably this crash. It's the worst crash I've ever had. And the scariest thing was when I was laying in the emergency room and this little young doctor was being kind of snippy. Actually, it was T7, T8, and T9 is what happened to me. I see somebody fractured a few on a snowmobile. Yep.
Shane with Later Plus, he's a heavy enthusiast of Aprilia as well. And he's rocking the V4 series on.
Oh, nice.
Right.
Nice.
So, and he had a incident about a year ago or so that sooner or later I need to get Shane on here, but good dude to talk to.
Yeah, definitely get him on. So the ribs, can't breathe real well. 3 fractures in a back brace. Ended up spending a few extra days in Savannah because I was in the hospital. They wanted to keep me longer, and I was like, yeah, not happening. I'm leaving. My wife not driving the truck with the trailer. So I ended up driving home in a back brace. freshly banged up, and 1,040. Luckily, we stopped on the way back, and I was able. They gave me some Dilaudid. I didn't want any of the other opioids. The Dilaudid is great because it doesn't make me loopy, and it actually kind of targets the pain. And it was very small dosage, 2 milligram. And they also gave me some pill form Toradol, which is a non-narcotic, and I was able to take that while I was driving. That kept things in check. So get back home, go to my doctor. Again, he tells me I'm crazy at my age. And I said, I agree. And let's see, round 1 up here was the end of May. So the end of February, March, April, the end of May, I'm feeling pretty good. Ribs are still really sore. Been going to physical therapy. Go up to Loudon for round 1. I go up for the practice day on Friday. Feeling pretty good on the bike. Confidence isn't shaking too much. I go flying through turn 11. I lose the front end, low side. I'm hanging onto the bike, sliding across the pavement. Hit the rumble strips, bang up all my ribs on the left front. As I'm sliding along, my left handlebar snaps off in my hand, and I'm like, well, I probably ought to let go of the bike now because I'm not doing much. I just didn't want the bike to flip, and that's why I was kind of hanging on to it because I figured out I'm just going to slide off in the grass. Well, the rumble strips on the outside of 11, they're probably sharp-edged about this high, like a scale on a snake or whatever, but they were big. And I went across those. The vest had gone off, but by the time I got to the gator backs, the vest had deflated, and of course, across that with the ribs, and now I'm broken again. So
you're off the grid from racing at this very moment, correct?
I'm sorry, say again.
So you're not racing at this time, correct?
Oh, no. That's not it. After round 1, we had about a month off, and I was right back there for round 2 the next month. So I haven't missed a round yet. And
all right,
my very last round, I actually felt comfortable on the bike, and I actually did a personal best lap time. So I'm almost down to where I need to be to bump up to expert. But we'll see how we still got 2 more rounds to go for this season. But the first part of my season was horrible. When the doctor ever came in the ER and told me I broke my back, the first thing that went into my mind is, geez, am I still going to be able to race or not? That was the first thing I thought of. And if I had told my wife that then, she would have whacked me. I'd still be in the hospital.
Steve is asking, what might cause you to decide to stop racing?
When I can no longer ride the bike.
Okay. There you have it, Steve.
I've got a way of looking at things that a lot of people don't understand. And I base this off of my combat tours in the military. When it's your time to go, when you hit that expiration date, and I truly believe everyone has an expiration date, you just don't know what it is. And when it's your time to go, it doesn't matter what you're doing. You're going to go. Because I've had guys, I know guys that have been killed that, why was it them and not me? So I have to believe that. And I love motorcycles. And as long as I'm physically fit and I can still get out there and I'm not a speed bump to the rest of the guys, I'm going to keep going at it.
And I have to concur and back you up on that. I'm not Ricky Racer, but I will ride until I can't ride anymore, and then I'll be taking a look at a 3-wheeler, or depending on the circumstances. It's what I was born to do, and I've known that all my life. So,
yep,
that's part of that legacy that I shed on my channel, is just my journey after 45 years. I mean, my story isn't interesting or fascinating, but it's the truth. It's been my life, you know? So, Shane is asking, how's the bike? Was my first question after the wreck. And I assume he's not worried about the 650 being the Aprilia.
Yeah, I wasn't so worried about the SV. I was like, yeah, there's plenty of them around. You can almost replace it cheaper than you can fix it. But yeah, that does go through your mind. That wasn't the first thing I thought of. First thing I thought of is my wife's going to kill me. And I made sure I looked over and gave her a big thumbs up. Because she said it was horrifying to watch me go flipping through the air. Because once it hit the sand, it was over. It went full lock and tossed me. I knew it was coming. And she knew it was coming. She saw me headed that way, and I'm dabbing the rear brakes and the rear end sliding around, and I'm trying to grab some front. And I know if I grab the front, I'm going down. And I tried to ride it out. It just wasn't going to happen. And Eric, your audio has faded again.
Am I back?
You're back.
North by Southeast had a terrible wreck, broke 38 bones, and he was in a coma. And the first thing he asked when he came out is, how's my bike?
I love your audience. You've got a great bunch of people in the audience.
Because they're like you and me. They're not out to prove anything. They have a hard time just being themselves. You know what I mean? That's a rough road.
Free Ranger. The girl on the back of his Suzuki broke her leg when he fell off. Had to dodge Dad for years. I bet he did.
All right, that hit my funny bone. Well played. That's awesome. Okay, what's the goal for your channel or content regarding 388 racing or MSG retired?
Yeah, as we spoke about before we came on, you know, I did the whole monetized thing with my other channel when I was doing all the Stolen Valor stuff, and I've really kind of let it go. I no longer monetize any of my channels, and I won't. It's just such a pain in the ass with YouTube. So I'm not going to do it anymore. And I really need to concentrate a little bit on my MSG retired, because I've got stacks of just people that I don't even want to talk about right now because it gets my blood pressure up, that are embellishing or faking military careers with the Stolen Valor stuff. But I would like to really start putting some more content on that, and maybe highlighting some of the VA fraud that's going on. And as far as my racing channel, I just want people to be able to go on there and see how an old guy who's technically next month I'll be a senior citizen. I'll be 65 years old.
Next week I'll be 61.
So
I'm creeping on you.
You're catching me, but you better speed up a little bit.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah, I want people to be able to go on there and see that doesn't matter how old you are or your riding ability, go out and go to a school, go out, get on a racetrack where you don't have to worry about traffic. Everybody's pretty much trying to do the same thing. Learn how to ride a bike fast. Because believe it or not, speed is relative. And when you get on a racetrack and you're running, people say you're running 100. My RS 660, I can run 142 miles an hour down the straightaway at Roebling Road. Doesn't feel like it. Does not,
because the bike's designed for it, you know.
And speed is relative. You get used to it, which is, I know it's hard to say, but you get used to those speeds, and it's not a big deal for you to go from 140, grab a handful of brakes, throw it into a corner, drag your knee through the corner, and it's just an exhilarating experience to be able to ride a bike to your full capacity, because you'll probably never be able to ride the bike to its full capacity. Not unless you're like MotoGP stars.
Yeah, Bobby, he's out in Arizona. He's a retired vet as well, so he takes Valor quite serious for what it's worth. So we've
Thank you so much for the salute on that.
um, we've talked roughly, and I think you already answered this, what bikes do you currently own? Do you still have the SV650, or is that up for
I
sale?
do not actually. I sold it to one of the guys I race with. He's got a couple of SVs, and it had a fresh motor in it, which he blew up last round because he got the bike back running again, and he went out and overheated it and blew the motor up. But I did sell that. I still have my 2018 Harley Ultra Anniversary, which hasn't seen a lot of use this year, but we're going to get it out tomorrow. And me and the missus are going to take a nice little ride up around the Quabbin. And I've got the 2021 Aprilia RS 660. That's my current and only race bike. And then I did something completely ridiculous. I went out and found a Coleman CT 200 UEX mini bike
That's your pit bike.
for a pit bike. And of course, nothing I own ever stays in stock trim.
Of course.
So the motor's been replaced with a Predator Harbor Freight 224 stroker motor, which I've put a 24 millimeter flat slide carb on it.
Dude, the thing hasn't had brakes or not.
Yeah, it's got rear brakes.
All right.
It's got no, I didn't buy it new. I bought it used.
You can buy them on Amazon for that matter, or Walmart sells a variant of it. They're all over the place.
Yep. And I put a big cam in it, some heavier valve springs, took all the governor crap out of the motor. I've had the motor torn apart about 3 times. As a matter of fact, I bought the new motor, took it in the garage and tore it all apart and ripped all the governor shit out of it. And then put it back together.
So did you over your lifetime, did you ever commute to work on a bike as your primary transportation?
I did. When we got married in Enterprise, Alabama. I met my wife when I was stationed at Fort Rucker. She had a Mercury Monarch sedan, and I had a Yamaha XS 850. That was it. And we left there and went to Fort Bragg shortly after we got married. As a matter of fact, we got married so Uncle Sam would pay for the move. And that was my daily transportation for quite a while before we could afford an additional vehicle. And even that, we sold her car, got another vehicle, but between the dirt bikes I had and my street bikes and all that, the street bikes, that XS 850, and then somebody offered me something for it, and I ended up buying a brand new XJ 550, and that was my daily transportation. As a matter of fact, I went TDY up to Fort Eustis, Virginia, from Fort Bragg, and I rode my motorcycle up there, my little XJ 550, and on the weekends I'd ride at home so I could be at home for the weekends from the school I was attending at Fort Eustis. So
good stuff.
Yeah, put lots of miles on bikes as my main commute.
Which was your favorite bike of all time? And that includes race bikes. It may be your new Aprilia. Technology is a good thing as they advance. Whenever I revisit old bikes that I loved, I'm like, my God, this thing is awful compared to today's standards.
You know, I think my most favorite bike I had, and it's going to be a toss-up between my BMW K75S and my
Iconic.
ZRX 1200R.
Okay.
That was really the Eddie Lawson replica bike, and it was really your first sit-up type of liter plus sport bike. Twin shock, decent suspension on it. Well, of course, I don't leave anything stock, but that was just a fun bike because you were sitting up, had high handlebars. It was a lot of fun. I used it for teaching on the track because I could sit up, I could look back. It just made it really easy for doing that. Plus, I got to bring all my buddies' girlfriends for a ride on the back on the racetrack.
What's your favorite trip or ride you've taken of all time?
My favorite trip was to Sturgis when I took my wife.
Did she have a good time?
Great time. We had a fantastic. It was just us. Actually, I'll give a shout out to one of my main sponsors, Rob's Dino Service in Gardner, Mass. Rob and one of his employees, the girl that used to run his office, were out in Sturgis. We met them a couple of times and did a little bit of riding. But for the most part, we'd get on the bike in the morning, we would take off, and we would come back at night. And we did all Needles Highway. We did all the big Sturgis rides. We got to see the buffalo up close. I wasn't going to go over and pet one of the fuzzy cows, but people do that every year. I don't know.
And they're stupid and they get bulldozed. So you do stupid things, you win stupid prizes.
Yes.
Shane is asking, did you take the missus during the rally or not?
I'm sorry. What was it?
Did you take your wife during the rally or not when you went to Sturgis?
I'm just trying to find it here.
I have it on the screen.
You're oh. Yeah, it was during the rally. We were there during the Sturgis Bike Week.
Gotcha. Have you ever ridden outside of the U.S. in other countries? And I assume being a military person, that's a no-brainer.
Well, I have. Actually, the only place I really rode was over in Germany. When we left Fort Bragg, I had gotten rid of my street bike. I had a KX 250 that back then they had the three-wheelers, dirt bikes. So what I had done with that KX 250 is I converted it into an enduro bike by putting the stator and that stuff off of the Takati three-wheeler into my KX, along with the transmission, because it was a taller transmission. And I converted my KX over to an enduro bike, and we took that over to Germany with us. And while I was in Germany, I picked up a Honda Nighthawk 650. And didn't get to do a lot of riding because I was pretty busy with the military. But Germany's quite the place to ride a motorcycle.
Absolutely. German Jobbies is from there. He just laid down his bike a couple weeks ago. An idiot passing around a street sweeper on a blind curve gave him a head-on collision presentation, so he had to layer down, so to speak. So he had a Suzuki Weestrom, the SV, or the 650 variant. Any plans for another bike in the future? Are you getting out on Harleys, the tuna boats?
Right. I think right now I'm pretty much set. That Aprilia is going to be pretty competitive for a while.
Okay.
I don't see where that's going to drop off. And people still aren't even able to get into the electronics really well to be able to make adjustments to it. So I'm waiting for some of that stuff to come out. And I've got the race ECU in it from Aprilia, and Rob's Dino Service, he's waiting on the software to be able to actually put that on the dyno and tune it. But I'm waiting on the software to be able to get in where I can tweak the traction control a little bit. Even on the lowest setting, it's a little bit too aggressive. So a lot of times, and I've got all the Nintendo buttons on the handlebars. So, right. I'm toggling through the traction control, and even on one, if you watch any of my my on bike race videos, the camera catches the top of the instrument cluster, and you can see it. I'm coming through a turn, and I start to roll the throttle up, and it's just a little overly aggressive with when it keeps it from, or it reduces your throttle input a little bit. So about 90% of the time I'm running with it off.
I want to point out Free Ranger stated we ought to put on on your bucket list the Isle of Man TT ride. That has been on my bucket list my whole life. And if any of us in this group ever put together a group to go see that, count me in. I'm down for it.
Yeah, me too. We back in the mid '90s when I was racing, there was a few of us. Some of the guys I raced with had talked about maybe trying to go over and do one of the maybe the junior TT or something like that, but there was no way that was ever going to work out because we were all young and broke.
Shane has a recommendation. Check out Gabbro's tunes. You will not be disappointed, and he will work with your Dino Tuner hand in hand with T800.
You know, I got in a couple of arguments with Gabbro in regards to some of his dyno tuning, and I got some dyno results on my site. Now, I've looked at some of the graphs that people have posted with his tunes, and he tends to blame everything on that SC1 pipe, which I don't use. I use a Hendel exhaust. And, you know, after looking at his AFR records and that stuff, I'm pretty happy I went with the Aprilia race ECU. You know, unless you can actually put the machine on the dyno and get immediate results, having somebody else give you a can tune, yeah, they work okay, and it's great for people that don't have the support to get a dyno done. There are a few places that have already got the software to be able to do it, but his explanations as to why there's a big dip between 6,000 and 7,000 RPMs, it didn't fly with me. If you look at my dyno graph on my 660, it's smoking straight up. I have no dip, and it's right in the meat of the torque area. From about 6,800 to 7,500 is your maximum torque on that bike.
Well, you guys are above their pay grade on this discussion. Care, Steve. Thank you for stopping by, friend. Steve used to ride a K75 as well. His all favorite bikes.
Yep, great bike.
All right, quick lightning round, and then we'll wrap up this stream. I try to keep it just at 1 hour. First bike you ever owned? You mentioned your dad bought you. What was that?
1973 Suzuki TC 125K Prospector. Had the dual range gearbox on it.
The Prospector. And I bet you loved every minute of that bike.
I beat that thing to death.
I love it. What's the favorite bike you've ever owned of all time? And we've already talked about that. You said either the K75 or the Z12R.
The ZRX12, yeah. I'm going to go with the ZRX.
ZRX. All right. Kawasaki.
Yep.
If money were no object, but what bike would you like to own right this very minute?
It's very cliche. Probably a Ducati V4.
The Panigale?
Yeah.
Oh, that's just sex on wheels, though.
It is. It is. And, I mean, there's other bikes out there that are probably a lot better.
But, you know what I'll go for? I used to be a huge Confederate fan, which is now got bought out in their combat motors. Anyway, I've talked about that before. That's a whole nother chapter of my life. That was a mess. But I would go for Cano Reeves Company, the Arch.
Yeah.
Honestly, for 80 grand, you're getting a solid bike built V-twin dyno type chassis. But I've never ridden one, but that would have to try one out. But that would be my first choice.
And you're fading again, Eric. Your audio is dropped and you're froze up a little bit there. Let's see if your audio's back. Nope, not yet. Not yet. I guess when you live where they have to pump in the sunshine, they're not real good at pumping in the internet either. Nope, still not back. You might want to mute it a couple of times and then bring it back.
Check 1 2.
There
Check.
we go. We're back.
Okay, before it pops out again, we were talking about any advice to somebody wanting to start track riding, racing.
If somebody wants to start track riding, go out for one of your local track days. They usually have track coaches that can help you. Go take a rider school, one of the race schools, like up here in the Northeast, Penguin's real big. If you're in the Southeast, Ed Bargy Road Racing School. If you're out on the West Coast, you've got the Yamaha Champion School, as well as many others. But just go to your local track. They're going to have somebody there that's teaching, and do your research. Talk to the guys at the track. What's a good bike? And you can pick up used race bikes.
There's always somebody getting out of it.
Yep.
And invest in an air vest, an airbag vest.
Most definitely. I would not go back on the track without it.
Yeah. Last question of the evening. We'll call it a night. The weirdest thing you've ever dragged home on a bike. Now, those of us that have been riding for a long time have been presented with bringing home the damnedest things, from tires to toys for the kids for Christmas. A stuffed animal. What the strangest thing you've ever dragged home on your bike?
I have carried some crazy stuff on it, but I think the craziest thing I did was carry every bit of my field gear and all of my uniforms in 2 duffel bags on the back of a Harley Davidson XR 1200. And I mean, the front end was, if I gave it gas, it just stood up because I had so much weight on the back.
Oh my gosh.
But I had these 2 huge duffel bags that were strapped down in 14 different ways. And I rode that home.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Good stuff. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up. I try to keep it, like I said, out. I want to thank Craig, our welcome guest, to bring. I love having the different facets of riding, and why I invite people that ride different items. This is not just a Harley channel. I want to hear the whole spectrum. I don't care if you ride a scooter or you ride a postie bike, as Freedom Rangers says, Free Ranger says, but or whether you ride a Harley or the best of the best that's out there. We're all in to be in the win and have a good time, and the very basics of it all resonate with all of us, and that's what my channel's all about. So, anything you would like to add in before we close it out?
No, I just want to say thanks for having me on. It's been a lot of fun. I watch all your content. The stuff with your stepmom was amazing. I loved her stories. And I try and catch all your videos as often as I can.
My channel does not fit the algorithm as a white guy on YouTube that has a pickup truck with a gun. I just don't really fit the algorithm very well. So there you go. I say that tongue in cheek, but I think you know what I mean. I don't have any boobs and butt hanging out on my channel, so my channel's destined to fail.
Hey, I tell you, if we could both grow boobs, we'd have 5 times the subscribers we have right now.
Well, fellas, thank you all so much for those that hung through the duration. I appreciate each and every one of you. I love you all. Thank you so much. Peace, everybody.
Have a good night.